So Gladiator II is the sequel to 2000's Gladiator, and like with Gladiator, Gladiator II is directed by Ridley Scott. In the events of Gladiator II, we follow Lucius, the kid from the first film, who is now all grown up, although this time Lucius is portrayed by Paul Mescal. Lucius loses his wife, he becomes a slave, and then he becomes a gladiator. Before I continue on with today's video, I just wanted to say, welcome to my channel, everybody. For those of you who are coming by my channel for the very first time, be sure to hit the subscribe button to not miss a feature video, or it's a feature review, a reaction, a top 5, or whatever I have coming your way, and join me on my journey to 10K subscribers and beyond, because believe me when I say this, guys, you are not going to miss the cool stuff I have coming your way. And for those of you coming back to my channel, by the way, welcome back, everybody. You have no idea how happy I'm to see your faces once again. And also, I also want to apologize really quick that this is not my typical green screen background. My tripod that I usually put my microphone on broke. I ordered a new one that comes in a couple of days, so I want to apologize for the different look. Do not worry, this is just temporary. Alrighty, guys, so let's get into Gladiator II. For those of you who know me very well, or for those of you who know me personally, I absolutely adore the first Gladiator. This movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite Ridley Scott film. I will never forget the first time I saw Gladiator. I was in high school, and this movie blew me the hell away. I mean, everything about it is absolutely incredible, and I made sure to rewatch it before I saw Gladiator 2 on Thursday night. This movie still holds up like a fine wine. It is as epic as it was when it came out in 2000. I cannot believe this movie came out 24 years ago. That is, I feel fucking old saying that. Gladiator was such a phenomenal film, and in my opinion, it's a masterpiece of a movie that ended so beautifully, and it shut that door. It tied that bow so perfectly and so beautifully that there is no need for a sequel, no matter what treatment that they possibly have for it. Guys, no need. The moment that Gladiator 2 was finally announced, I kept saying no. There is no need for a second Gladiator film. That first film is really, at least in my opinion, one of those masterpieces out there that did not need a sequel. No matter what people tell me, I think that Gladiator is a perfect film. It's a masterpiece of film that did not need a sequel. Watching this movie, I'm not expecting for this movie to be better than the first movie. I just want a good and a, well, entertaining sequel. And guys, the question is Gladiator 2 good? Yes, Gladiator 2 is a good and an entertaining sequel, and a sequel that, honest to God, while I do have some thoughts to share later on, Gladiator 2 is a more than worthy sequel. When it comes down to the performances, the first thing that I gotta get out of the way first, Paul Mescal. Everybody, and I mean when I say this, guys, well, not really everybody, but most of everybody has been saying that Paul Mescal is not Russell Crowe, to which I play this. If you're expecting Paul Mescal to live up to the powerhouse and the charisma that was Russell Crowe from that first movie, you're only going to see yourself over disappointment. For me personally, I thought that Paul Mescal was really good in this role. Despite certain things that do happen throughout this movie that seem very familiar in terms of character arcs, Paul Mescal, I thought, was really good in the film. He does convey a great screen presence. He has great charisma. He does nail those action scenes very well, and he has some great dramatic sensibilities, along with some great comedy in this movie, too. I also thought that Pedro Pascal was great, along with Joseph Quinn, who you can tell is having a great maniacal time as his character. These scenes during this movie, for me, was easily Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington is just freaking brilliant in this movie. Every single time that Denzel Washington comes on screen, I mean, come on, it's Denzel Washington. What more do you want me to say about that man than pretty much everybody else has already said in their reviews of this movie? He chooses the scenery, and he brings in such a phenomenal performance. Any performance that, you know what, I know this year might be a little crowded in terms of Best Supporting Actor. If Denzel Washington gets in this race for Best Supporting Actor, I would be overjoyed because, man, Denzel has some sequences in which he steals the entire movie. If this movie proves anything, I mean, The Last Duel showed it too, but man, Ridley Scott still has it when it comes to showcasing big, epic spectacle movies. This man can still do it, not just in terms of brutal, bloody fights, but just showcasing an epic spectacle movie and without doing the quick cutting action BS. Oh, and also, something else that I gotta mention here as well. For a movie that has a budget of around $250 million, not only does this movie feel big, but actually looks like that money was spent. But it actually feels like a big budgeted movie. Can I tell you guys how awesome that feels when you're I mean, seriously, you guys have no idea how awesome that felt walking into this movie on Thursday, by the way, on a big IMAX screen. And I should also mention this as well, in a packed audience. Seeing this movie on a packed showing and an IMAX screen Thursday night, let alone for a Ridley Scott movie, there's just something about that made me feel great as a movie fan. And I gotta tell you guys, Ridley Scott absolutely deserved it. Now, I will say this much. Are there certain things I will talk about later on in terms of, let's say, cost and how things looked? Sure, but that'll be talked about later. But otherwise, guys, he makes this movie look good, big, and epic, and Ridley Scott did an amazing job with this thing. The action sequences in this movie are gnarly, they're brutal, they're bloody, and some spots they're quite gory, but otherwise, guys, Ridley Scott not only shows why he still has it in terms of directing big budget movies, but for also directing some kick-ass and brutal action. Something else in particular that I gotta talk about is the musical score by Harry Gregson Williams. Gladiator was scored by Hans freaking Zimmer, so I can only imagine the pressure and the anxiety and how nervous Harry Gregson Williams stepped into the role of composer here, but man, he absolutely killed it. But then again, this is the guy who composed one of my favorite games of all time, Metal Gear Solid 3, so it's really of no surprise that Harry Gregson Williams composed not only an epic score, a very just... What am I to say that epic? No surprise here that Harry Gregson Williams not only stepped to the plate, but he delivered a great freaking score on this movie.
Well, that's just fucking great!
With that being said, the question is this. Is Gladiator 2 better or as good as the first movie? No. Going on too easily, my biggest criticism with Gladiator 2, and that is this. In terms of the storytelling, Gladiator 2 does rehash some pretty big story beats that first film. Now, obviously, I won't go into what those story beats are, but there are specific moments in this movie where you're thinking, okay, I remember this. Yeah, this is very reminiscent of the first movie. I mean, seriously, guys, especially when it comes down to the main character. I mean, just look how this plays out. The main character's loved one, her wife dies. He becomes a slave. He becomes a gladiator. Feels familiar? Well, that's because, well, it is quite familiar. How the movie plays out overall is different from that first Gladiator film, but I will say, in terms of certain story beats, there are story beats that are definitely, and I mean most definitely, rehashed in that first film. And because of that, going on to the next flaw I have with this movie, there are some bits of this movie that I can guarantee you will see from coming miles away. There is a certain character arc in this movie where I swear to God to you guys, you can only see where this thing starts, but you can most obviously see where this thing goes until this character arc eventually does. And some of the CG, in particular the CG animals, wow, did they look bad. There are a couple of shots with the CG animals that legitimately, guys, looked like PS3 graphics. There are some CG elements in this movie that just looked really, and I mean really bad.
And here we go.
So overall, when it comes to Gladiator 2, the most important question is this, and the words of Maximus from the first movie,
Are you not entertained?
was I entertained? Absolutely yes. Gladiator 2 is not only an entertaining sequel, it is a good sequel, but it is a sequel that is most definitely worthy. All in all, I'm going to give Gladiator 2 a 3.5 out of 5. Gladiator 2 isn't as good as the first film, but regardless, guys, Gladiator 2 is very much entertaining, and it absolutely is a worthy sequel. I hope you all enjoyed my review of Gladiator 2. If so, please hit the like button, or if you dislike the review, hit the dislike button. If you guys want to see my previous 2 reviews, please click it right there or right there. And of course, until my next review or video goes live, I will see you all next time.